Okay, welcome one, welcome all. Thank you all for joining us on this very special journey together. This year is a unique one, and it's for Chaver that want to spend some 35 to 45 minutes a day together learning, and I wouldn't call it learning Rambam. I would call it learning Torah Shebal Peh, the Kol Torah Kula, and the teacher is the Rambam. Very big difference. And we're going to be going through, the Rambam did a fabulous job, Begashmius, at codifying the entire Torah Shebal Peh to the extent that he called his chibur the Mishnah Torah, the Viceroy. And many of us with the Shir know already a lot about the Rambam, so I'm not going to take you too much into too many details, but the Rambam felt that one can, in a comprehensive way, learn Chumash and straight go through Pirush Rambam. Welcome, join. And we'll be able to go through the entire, everything he needs to know, not only Bizman Hazeh, but anything that's relevant to a Yid, also Bizman Abayis, Karbanas, Taras, and we will have Bezras Hashem going through the Rambam, a Perek a day, a very firm grasp on all areas of Torah, which is very special. I'm going to start for a second with a few thank yous for those that made this very special shir come to fruition. I want to begin by Rabbi Avram Rotban of Irgun Torah, together with a very special friend, Reb Shloima, that Reb Shloima Greenwald put together a fascinating and fabulous Siyum event, which inspired me to take on another shir and give this shir, as well as another few very special people behind the camera that you don't see, Reb Levi Nemirovsky and Reb Levi Hillel, together with Reb Yossi Overlander. Each one of them have a fabulous and a very special place in making this shir and a part in our Limud Torah. I want to add this shir as Lil Nishmas, Mrs. Yusewitz Miriam Bas Shmuel. Her yard is today. Sponsored by the extended Reuben family, and also L'Schos and the Full Shlema of Rabbi Yisrael Eliezer Ben Yusewitz Miriam, Rabbi Reuben from Albany. Okay, so let's jump right in. And the Perek of today, we're the first Perek of Hilchas Avodas Zara v'Chukas HaGoyim, the laws pertaining to idol worship and the ways, the minhagim, the different customs that Goyim that they instituted and they adapted, and therefore hence has become usher for a Yid. And the first Perek the Rambam is going to go through, it's unique to have such a Perek in Rambam, where the Rambam gives a full Perek to history, okay? And the whole ishtalshel, how from a world that the Eibishter created and Adam Rishon was there, and as we'll see, the children of Adam Rishon, and how all of a sudden did they sink and fall so low into idol worship, hence believing that the world was created by some piece of stone, piece of wood, which if you think about it for a second is ludicrous. So the Rambam dedicates the first Perek to giving us an understanding of that. The Rambam begins every new series of halachas, every new set, with a rundown, with a list of all the mitzvahs saying, all the mitzvahs leisa saying. They're very important. I'm going to do it at the end of the shir. So we jump straight into the history part of Avodas Kochavin. It's a unique Perek, a Gishmaka Perek, and we will have time in the end for going through an overview of all the different isurim that exist min haTorah biblically in regards to Avodas Zara. Obviously, each one of them has offshoots throughout Torah Shebal Peh that the Rambam is going to expand on. So, Perek Aleph, the first Perek Rishon, the first halacha. And the Rambam tells us the origins of Avodas Zara. Bimei Enosh, in the days of Enosh, which was the grandson of Adam Rishon. Imagine that, the man that was created, Adam Sheis Enosh. Tov bnei Adam tos gdola. The people made a. The Rambam, yeah, we're back on.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Rambam describes this tos. The Rambam has a very rich lashon in lashon hakodesh. It's mamish like the Tanoim's lashon in Mishnah. It's very special. So the Rambam says, "V'niv ara atas chachmei," so to speak, their wisdom was emptied out. The Enish Atzma Min HaToyim, and Enish himself, the grandson of Adam Rishon, was from those making the mistake. What was their mistake? And their mistake took on 3 stages. The first stage was the first generation. Their mistake was the following. Amru, they said, the Eibishter clearly created, Hashem clearly created the stars and the different planets and the galaxies. The Galgalim are the tracks on which the different orbits they go around the world, the way we learn Al Pi Torah. And they are, in order, Lahanigas Ha'olam, okay, the Eibishter runs the world through these Galgalim, through these Mazalis, okay? We all know the zodiac, okay? There is truth to the fact that the Eibishter has placed them in the sky and gives them power. And not only power, we know that based on the birth of a person, one could really know, take the safer, and one can really truthfully know a lot about himself, about his personality and about his style. And that means they definitely impact us. And as those Kochavin, they were tremendously wise people. The Rambam doesn't negate that. The Rambam later on will say that as this mistake progressed and grew a beard and payas, at that point it was already people making money and Nevi Sheker, plus bad people lying, and then at some point just a whole bunch of tipshim and people following the herd mentality, just following the grand mistake. But in the first generation, they were wise people, and there's tremendous chachma that goes into understanding how the mazalis interact and understanding its impact on the world. And as we'll see, in addition, it says that they were tremendous chachamim. They knew to taste the earth and knew which earth is good for planting what. They were tremendous. They were brilliant people in terms of the science of nature. However, they understood that because the Eibishter created these constellations, and he placed them on the sun b'moraim, he placed them in the heavens. V'cholok lam kavod, and he gave them respect. He notified us about their powers. V'heim shamash ma'amsham shem lefanov, and these are the servants that serve him. He does his work through them. Therefore, they not only assumed, but they taught that it is very appropriate to praise them and to beautify them and to give them respect and honor. Okay, that was the first mistake. They always kept on mentioning this is the will of the Eibishter. That as any king would want, you respect my team, my administration, right? So this is who the Eibishter chose. Oh, the official join us. This is who the Eibishter chose to create, to work through them. These are his advisors, so to speak, and that is the mistake. The essence of the mistake is they assumed these galaxies are advisors of the Eibishter, and they have their own understanding. And therefore, if you praise them, they'll get you more of what they are about. And that's where it's a mistake. But they were doing this, L'Shem Shemayim, the Eibishter's will, to raise up and honor the man or the being, the existence that the Eibishter chose to honor. In a similar vein, just like any king wants, you should respect his servants, and those that stand before him. This was all under the title of honoring the Eibishter. Now, once they made that first stage of a mistake, they started deviating, that they had their own personality, and they have their own understanding, and they didn't assume, as the Rebbe explains in a famous Maimer, that the truth is they're just guys and biyad chaytzev. They're just a hack in the hand of a hammer. The Eibishter chose to use them, but they're daimim, so to speak. Even though, as we learned earlier, the Rambam holds that certain dargis have their own grasp and understanding of Hashem, these galgalim, but still in terms of bchira, they don't have. And once you say they do have, and you honor them, they have a say in how much you get. That's where the mistake goes on and expands. Okay, once they came to this understanding, they started building these palaces and chambers, to bring sacrifices before them, and then they had full events and events of praising them with words, and to bow towards them, and this is all to, so to speak, reach the Eibishter's will in their bad understanding. And the reason it's bad again, because they attributed to them power that they did not have. It's true that the Eibishter chose them, and through them, it leaves its imprint on the person that's born. But we know, first of all, a Yid is Ein Mazel Yisrael, is Ein Mazel Yisrael. A Yid is higher than Mazel, but we know Mazel Yigoyver on a day of a person's birthday, and the Mazel is the constellations, which the way it was set up, the Milky Way, the way it was set up when he was born, that impacts his personality. So they definitely do have some form of impact on us. But the second they attributed that this is what the Eibishter wants, there they started deviating. This was the Iker, and what the Rambam means over here, the Iker is the source of Avodas Zara. This is where you deviated. This is where you cut off from the Eibishter, as Chassidus explains at length. The second there's an existence outside of the Eibishter, then from there until attributing Koichi Vaitzim Yodi and bowing down to other people and money and whatever, the way is already. And now, all those wise men that came to these conclusions, and this was an educated mistake. This was a thought process behind it. So those that knew the Ikara, the side of this Avodas Zara, this way of idol worship, they didn't say there's no God. Rather, this star is the creator. Rather, they said the Eibishter wants you should respect them. And now the Rambam is going to bring a source, and that this was their mistake. This is the beginning of Avodas Zara, very slight. Yirmiyahu Navi said, is there not a king between the nations that doesn't fear you? It's appropriate for you. Between all the wise of the nations, and within all their kingdoms, there's no one like you. In one detail, they're devoid of knowledge. And they become foolish in their tradition, and they're educating their children. That, as Rambam is going to explain, that this eitz, this is your rotzen. That's this hevel is what you want. Keloimer, says Rambam. Hakol yoidim, all the nations knew. Sha'ata hu akel levadecha. You are the only God. Their mistake was this mistake is what the Eibishter wants. And this started the problems. Now, that's one mistake. Now we know a mistake it's like a snowball. The first generation came with pure intentions. This is what the Eibishter wants, we'll do it. And a sidekick, we'll get a little bit more hashpah. The second generation already took it to the next level. Let's see. Says the Rambam, halacha beis, as time passed, now we're talking about false prophets, and they're already full of lies. They said the following: the Eibishter has commanded, not just this is part of the honor of the Eibishter, but we're doing it on our own accord. We just want to honor the ministers the Eibishter chooses. They already quoted the Eibishter on this, and they said, God has told us, you serve this and this star. Kochavin are all the stars. You should slaughter before it. This is what you should make a libation. It's a fancy way of saying pouring wine. You should build a chamber for it and a special house of worship. And you should inscribe its shape. So all the people can also bow to Hanashim, Baktan, Bashar, Amar. It's all the simple common folk that didn't have enough seichel to know the truth, that this is a farce, this is all bummises, that the Eibishter never commanded. This whole notion started because we want to respect the Eibishter. That the Eibishter, that the Creator said, make this image so everyone, all the women and children, and the Rambam, in his nonchalant way, points out that they didn't try to preach to the higher echelon. And it's Surah Shabbatim in Liboy, he would notify them, because sometimes talking about stars, they didn't even know how it looked. So he would invent and say, this is the shape, this is how it looks, and inscribe it and engrave this image, and everyone should bow to it. This is the shape of this and this star and galaxy. This is the way you should bow, and this is how you serve it. So this is the second stage of the mistake, where they're quoting the Eibishter, and this is what the Eibishter is telling them. These are Navi Sheker. They continue down this path, They started in the chambers, which in Inyan would have been, really, if someone's investing the money, it's for Hashem. And then Hashem wants, you serve it. That was the first mistake. But it took on a life of its own. And at this point, they're creating Itzuras Beicholis in these houses of worship. They made different shapes. They started making around trees and on the hilltops and mountaintops, all of them. They started sessions and they started they started gathering together, and they all collectively bow, and then they notified this Nevi Sheker that they notified to all the people, this graven image itself, it has the ability to do good for you if you serve it, and if you don't, no worries. It has the power to do bad. And this is within the second stage. This is already, they're taking it to the next level, right? That they already do bad, do good on their own accord. It's appropriate to serve it and to fear it. And the priests of these idols, they would tell all the entire nation, once you'll do this and this, you'll have this getchke. You'll do this and this service, you'll have a great success. And they started inventing rules already. You do this, it works for that. And they started, the second you print books, it's already printed. And you can already start quoting. Once you're quoting, so then everyone accepts. Then they started nourishing people after them, Lamai to get up. The Nevi Sheker, they're considered a Navi because they quoted the Eibishter, quoted Hashem on this. Then a whole bunch of Narasha people started getting up. We heard from the star, which is Shtusim Ba'abalm, that doesn't speak. Was the track that spoke to them, or the Malach, the angels, serve me this way, and they started telling the people, he wants you to do this, he wants you to do that. So you had people throwing stones at Markulis, and people going to the bathroom, and they were inventing, they're going happy. This expanded throughout the entire world. To serve these different images, each one with its own creative and weird ways, and to sacrifice before them. It's important to point out, we'll see later on in these halachas, that there are certain unique avodas. The Sanhedrin had to learn exactly how each Avodas Zara was served and how it was functioned. So its functionality and all these Narasha books that they're putting together. Imagine the Rambam and our Nasi and Av Beis Din in time of the Tanaim and beforehand, and the Zugais in the time of the Mishnah. They had to go through all this Narishkai to know if a person was Oiver, because there's a unique way to service based on these Kaimrim, this shtus. So this chakram, they say, quoted a lie in the name of a lie. They're quoting from, they're all quoting in the name of the first liar. So they had to Beis Din had to toil in all this Narishkai. That's one thing. But you should know that there's universal ways of serving. And this is also, as we'll soon, at the end of today's shir, we'll go through quickly the mitzvah, mitzvahs loisaseh, that the Rambam is going to expand on throughout the whole series of Hilchas Avodas Zara, Chukos HaGoyim. And the Rambam is going to mention that there's a general isser of lishtachvos, to bow and to slaughter karbanos, and lanasech, to make a libation. These are universal, regardless of the unique way that they. And then there are universal ways of expressing love, which are also, as we'll see, their own issue, like megafef, a person that hugs or kisses. So even if they aren't the way of Avodas Zara, that you have also problems. So the Rambam points out they invented their own ways, and now the Kivon Sharch Yamin. This is the third stage. At that point, Eibishter's name was not mentioned anymore. It took on completely its own entity. The Kivon Sharch Rahman al-Islam. The Kivon Sharch Yamin. Nishtakeh Hashem Anichbad V'Anoira. The name of the Eibishter is great and honorable name. The awesome name. Yipi Kola Yikum, from the entire universe. Umidaitam, and from their consciousness. The world was devoid of the knowledge of Hashem. This is what the Rambam and the Rambam's tired of Lashon when he comes to describe Avraham Avinu. the Rambam describes Avraham as a giant, that he was born in a world of paganism, and to not only understand that this is a mistake, to trace back from where this mistake came from, and based on this, understand what's mushla from the Eibishter, what definitely is not the creator of the world. And as the Rambam traces back and back and back, in the name of Avraham Avinu, there's a mime of the Friedrich Rebbe where the Friedrich Rebbe also describes Avraham Avinu being this Bainin, and it's interesting. As we're going to see, the Rambam has his description. The Rambam says Avraham Avinu, he's metavach two midrashim. One, we know, actually, the Asagas Aravid understands from the Rambam that he doesn't learn that way. So the Asagas Aravid, he says right away on the spot, you know, Avraham Avinu was Magal at the age of 3. The Rambam says he started when he was very young, and Hikiras Boyer, he only came to his full conclusion and understanding of the Eibishter at the age of 40. So it's a long process of Ram meditating and being shoylel. He pushed by process of elimination, was shaving off layers of this shmutz, of these years of mistakes. And so the Rambam describes, Kivon Sharchai Yamim, they already forgot about the Eibishter, and the Loikiru, so world of darkness. V'nim to kol ha'aretz, the entire nation of the land, v'anoshem v'aktanim, the women, the children, einan yoidin ela tzur shel eitz v'evan. All they know about, we were created by this stone, by this wood, by this statue, v'heichel shel abinyan, and they knew of this is the perch where they go, and this is what we know. Shenischanchum mikatnusan, this is the way they were educated from the youth, l'shtach v'islam, to bow to them, la'avdan, and to serve them, and l'shava b'shman. And there's a very interesting indication here. They built moral laws around it. It means there was integrity. The world continued. They just skipped the principle of the world. They forgot the Eibishter. But they would swear to each other. Okay? They would commit to each other. It was some form of, right? We're talking about the Dera Mabel. The Rambam doesn't go in, but Dera Mabel went through in the middle. And they continue with a mistake. Dera Palaga right afterwards, they said, Nasalonu shame, and we're going to hold up the sky, the Mabel shouldn't happen again. All this stuff is ongoing, because there were times after the Mabel that they learned their lesson. They were moral. But still, this detail of the Eibishter was lacking. And we'll soon see how the Eibishter is waiting for Avraham Avinu to recognize him. Once Avraham Avinu recognized the Eibishter, then the Eibishter revealed himself to Avraham Avinu, and the Rambam doesn't go into that detail for a good reason, because this is Sefer Halachas. The Rambam wants us to know that whatever the Eibishter had to say for generations, that was told to Moshe Rabbeinu. But the Rambam says, let's see. Okay, the wise between them at this point of darkness, the priests, okay, it's the only creators are these stars and these galaxies and the world that was created for them. There was no one that knew the Eibishter. The only ones that knew him, and here the Allah makes a point, the Rambam makes a point that there were unique individuals in the world that did know Kigoyin Chanoich, that the Eibishter took early because he started leaning towards sin. So Shelach, Noach, Shem, Va'ever. Now, mind you, Noach, the Mabel happened. The Eibishter destroyed the world because of the Churban, and they went back to having normal family life. But still, they understood there's a higher power. They attributed it to different deities, and the ones that knew of it were Noach, Shem, Va'ever. It's important to point out that Avraham Avinu, even though at the beginning he realized he came to the understanding on his own that there's not an Eibishter, we know that Avraham Avinu, we have from Midrashim that Avraham Avinu sat in the yeshiva of Noach. Imagine. Noach was describing to Avraham Avinu the flood that the Eibishter brought because of these mistakes. Noach lived 500 years. And Shem, which is one of the 3 sons, he was in the Teva. Yaakov learned in Yeshiva Shem Va'ever. So they were able to hear from real live people, but it obviously wasn't their agenda. And it's actually, when the Rambam describes Avas Hashem, he says real love is when if you appreciate it, you go out and spread the word to others. And the They didn't have this, evidently. They loved the Eibishter, but it was personal. Noach cared for his own. The Eibishter said, build a teva, right? You all know that Noach took 100 years. Why? Yeah, he didn't. He was. If someone asked him, well, it takes 100 years to make a statement. If someone asked him, he told them about the Mabul. He wasn't very active. Avram Avinu, as we're soon going to see, once he got to the Maskana, he took it and ran. Yeah, we said. The world is rolling onward. Till the pillar of the world was born. Shehu Avram Avinu, Avram, our forefathers. Kivan shenigmal eison zeh. At what age? The Rambam is clear that he was very young. Once he concluded his growth, but nigmal is used in terms of stops nursing. He was young. He started going through in his mind, having thoughts. Vukotan, he was very young, and as I mentioned, the Ravid right away says he was 3 years old. He started analyzing day and night. And he's wondering, how could it be that the Galgal Achi that's moving the entire galaxy, it's happening on its own? What creates this movement? There's no one causing this. I say, who's the cause that has this effect? He can't control himself. He's limited. So he's definitely not the creator of others. Avram did not have anyone teaching him. And there was no one notifying him. Elamushka, the Ur Kazdim, is so to be sunk in Ur Kazdim, which is present Iraq, between a whole bunch of foolish, narisha idol worshippers. And to the extent he continues and says, Va'aviv, Terach, Ve'imoy, Masal Bas Karnavai, Ve'chol and all the nation he knew, all the people he knew, Avodas Zara, they served idols. And Avram Avinu served together with them. However, his heart is still wandering and he's understanding. Until he understood the true path, the righteous line, midaitoi, or approach, midaitoi from a mature and conscious decision. V'yada sheyeshem aleka echad. He came on his own to the conclusion there's one God. He stands above and causes the galaxy to move. And the Hu Bara Koil, he created everything. And in all that exists, there's no Elika, there's no deity, and also there's no other power outside of his power. Which means he undid the mistake that they continuously had, which was that different stars have different powers. He understood that's all wrong. There's one power in this world, which is the Eibishter. Stripped everything else. V'yada, and then he understood where the mistake came from. V'yada shekolam toim. He also understood and undid the mistake that they all mistakenly believe the Eibishter wants them to get respect, and so they have no power. He saw the whole cause to this mistake, and he understood that the mistake began by them, by, so to speak, an innocent mistake, that they wanted to serve the Eibishter, and therefore he went on a raid and a campaign to stop idol worship, and not idol worship because he wanted to explain to them that they are not the creators. That was the big decision he came, the big understanding, the big conclusion he came to. He wanted to undo the mistake, and therefore that they should not serve, even in the name of the Eibishter, even the first mistake, that in the days of Enoch. And he said, he saw the whole progression. At the age of 40, he recognized his creator and personally met him. Now, there's another 30 years. This is, if you think about it, it's fascinating. Avram Avinu was 70 plus when the Eibishter told him, gave him the first, actually revealed himself and told him Lech Lecha to leave and Lech Lecha Ma'aretzecha. 30 years of Avram was on a campaign. He understood it's Eson. It's a certain level of das, of realization that he took it against the whole world, took them up to task, and as we'll soon see, almost got killed. It's from the Midrashim. Nimrod threw him in and orkazed him into the Chilahashiv Chuvas. Once he understood this, he started answering people. Near Kazdem, all the questions of people in Kazdem in Iraq. He started having debates. It's not true what you're doing. It's not a true path that you're following. He started breaking all the idols. And started publicizing to the masses. It's only appropriate to serve the Eibishter of the world. It's appropriate only to bow to him, to slaughter, to lanasa, to pour libations. So all the future generations should recognize him and not make this mistake again. Hence, we should destroy and break all these different images. All the folk should make them say, now, there was a limited time. He was the baby. At some point, Avraham Avinu overpowered them. At that point, Bikash HaMelech, which we know as Nimrod, wanted to kill him. V'nasa le'neis, he was saved. V'yatza, Lord Kazdim. There's many midrashim on this. Upon him, I'll quote one of them. The Gemara, Psachim, and Reishis Rabbah, Talmud Ve'Eliyahu, describe that Nimrod told Terach, and Terach came to Nimrod. Yeah, there was law and order, like we said. They were swearing in the names of these. So he said, what's going to be the verdict for this son that burnt all our idols? He burnt it, it should be burnt. Avraham Avinu was taken, they placed him in prison for 10 years. Banos HaKivshon, they built this huge furnace, and Vayimus Nagim, Umevim, Eitzim, L'Kivshon Shal Avram, they would push it for 10 years. They're piling on. It's like Baiman. I don't know if you ever saw kids schlepping from months before. They're schlepping all your odds and ends and all pieces and shmatis. As the whole, this is their gedlichkeit. They're schlepping to the furnace to take care of the apostate, Avraham Avinu. And then when they threw the Eibishter came down and saved him. Now, the reason he just brings Bikish HaMelech Laharga, which means he wanted to, even though we know he did worse than that, was to explain, the Rebbe says this in the Chutzachas, to point out that Avraham Avinu was ready for Mesiras Nefesh. He wanted, and he would have stepped back if Avraham Avinu would have pulled back, denounced. But he didn't. Okay? He started notifying, as we said, there's one God. This is when Avraham Avinu escaped to Haran. It's only him that is appropriate to serve. He would go and call out to Mekabit. We know that he called out. He built the whole system around this. He lived in the Midbar. He built an Eshel. Right? This is Avram Oyavi. If you know it, you go and spread it. Right? This is the Rebbe teaches us. You love the Eibush, the message. You go out to the public. And Avram will go. Now, he was gathering the masses from city to city, mamlachat to mamlachat, kingdom to kingdom, Eretz Canaan, which will in the future become Eretz Yisrael. And he called out, he called in the name of the God of this world, the God. Now, the Kivon Shoyam is they would gather. They would start questioning him. He had the ability, as the Rambam describes him eloquently, to explain each person based on his level. He mastered that art. Until he brought him back to the beaten path, the true path that he discovered. Rambam. He describes that Avraham had thousands and tens of thousands of people. He had a huge following. Behem Anshe Beis Avram. This is who we will refer to as Beis Avram. We know when Avraham Avinu went out to the battle, so we know the Medrash tells us that Yitzchak is Bigmatria, the amount of people he went out with, and he really was going just with Eliezer. But the Rambam holds Beis Avram. He went with tens of thousands of followers. He implanted in their heart and in their minds the Ikra Gadol, the Chibur by Sfarim. Note the Rambam holds that Avraham Avinu was Mechaber, plural, Sfarim. We know of one Sefer. If you open Sefer Yetzirah, Chibur Avraham. You're looking, who's the Rebbe Avraham? Gadol Ben Avon Shmai, right? So and it says he invested and authored books. He notified his son Yitzchak. V'yashav Yitzchak, and Yitzchak Yashav Yeshiva. As we know, the Pascha Yeshiva Ma'aveseinu, they always continue teaching. Malamedu Machzer. He taught and brought back to the origin, brought back to the true belief of the Eibusher. Yitzchak Yaakov. Yitzchak notified Yaakov. Yitzchak was the one that appointed Yaakov officially. Once there was Yaakov and Esav, he should be the one to continue the tradition of teaching. V'yashav, Melamed, U'Masakol, Nilvim Elov. He would teach all those that follow him. Now, Yaakov Avinu limed banav kulam. Yaakov Avinu taught all his sons. However, fascinatingly, I just made that up. I think so. I'm not sure. He separated and designated as the future teacher of Am Yisrael Shevet Levi. Shevet Levi. He appointed him as the leader of Am Yisrael. Yeshiva. He sat him in yeshiva, that was his official place to teach Lamed Derech Hashem, the path of the Eibusher, V'lishmar mitzvahs Avram, to guard the commandments Avram Avinu taught them. Lasis Chesed, Avram Avinu taught the ways of the Eibusher, right? Not sacrificing people. Shem mitzvah bnei Noach, obviously, he maintained everything that was taught in Yeshiva Shem Ba'eber, which were all the Noachide laws. Now, he told them, he commanded them, that they should forever have that shame ongoing. There should be one person designated to teach the whole Shevet Levi, and Shevet Levi teach Bnei Yisrael. This realization should not be lost, which his fear was realized in the time of Mitzrayim. As we'll see. This continued, and throughout, and all the children of Yaakov, and they followed Manasseh ba'olam. Hence, ultimately, finally, there was a nation, Shiyadas Hashem, collectively a group of people that knew of the Eibusher and lived based on the, again, not yet the Torah, even though we know that Avram and Kim called Torah Kula, but Al Kapanim, what's known to us and what they preached to others was, because Goyish Shabbos Chayim Misa, right? They weren't going to teach them to come in Torah. What they taught them morals based on the Torah, the Shavmitz of Bnei Noach. The Eibusher is very clear how he wants you short. So this is one of the Shavmitz of Bnei Noach. So people, there's order, law and order, and no cruelty to animals, and you know, not to be frivolous, and morality, and adultery, etc. All the adultery. Now, the problem began where Yidden had to go through a purging process before receiving the Torah, what we call libun, and they needed to go through the shibud Mitzrayim that Eibusher told Avram Avinu. He told him by Bris and Absarim, Geri Ezrach Beretz Lehem, Betziv Ezbanim Shle Yasikum Ibnei Esari, and the Chazu Limon Maseim. They drang sich between the Goyim again, and they started going backwards, right? Like we used the generation before the Renaissance, the Dark Ages. Fascinating story of the Rebbe, that there was once an exhibition at Yisrael, and a certain artist that the Rebbe was very close to put on display all his artwork on Yiddish life in from communities in Brooklyn. I don't know if it was pictures or drawings, and they had very, very prominent, respectable people come through. And he had a guest book, and the Rebbe wanted to know details. The Rebbe took him, and like many people, the Rebbe was mekarev, and the Rebbe wanted to hear from him how the event was. So he knew the Rebbe wants to hear, so he told the Rebbe that this very respected figure in Eretz Yisrael came by and wrote in the guest book that going through your exhibition takes me back to the Dark Ages. Imagine that, a Yid. So the Rebbe sent back, he should notify this Yid that if he'll do some research, he'll find out that for the Fruma Yidden it wasn't so dark, and he'll do a little research on what's going on today in the public, and he'll find it's nicht so lichtig. It's not so light what's going on, right? So the kids, they started lahavdil. Okay, the Yidden started taking on these paganistic customs and rituals, and the Lavid Avodas Zara Kamoisim, like the Goyim. Chutz mi Shevet Levi. Shevet Levi she'amad mitzvahs avos. And we know me'olam le'avad Shevet Levi Avodas Zara. The Rambam tells us not only by the Egel that Shevet Levi remained loyal throughout the entire Galus Mitzrayim. Shevet Levi has never served Avodas Zara. We know Midrashim tell us that that they were Leute Stabdum Levi. From the beginning, when Perek came and sweet talked them, the Mendel tells us Perek hung a brick and said, "You see me working, it's what we all need to do." And everyone were very patriotic, and all the Yidden went to work. Sheikh Levi said, "I'm sorry, we're dedicated, and we're like Lahavdil, like we're the neshama of the nation." And we know the Rambam has this shit, the Lo Shevet Levi Bilvat. Every Yid is able to take on this Kedush of Shevet Levi. I'm not only from that, he says this about Kohen. So Kochavin, and that's what we're doing, all of us. So Mishevet Levi Sha'amad Mitzvah, so they stood true to their father's command, and they never served. Now, Okimat Kot, a little bit would have passed, but Ikar Shashasla Avram Nekar, this plant, this the seed that Avram made a plant, it would have been uprooted. The Chazum Niyakal Tosa Amoti Yasam, and the nation of Yaakov, as a Umashi Yadas Hashem, as Ram described, would have gone back to being like Avodas Zara, like the Malachim cried out when the Eibishter was drowning the Yidden. So the Malachim cried, the Yidden were mamish holding at that point. They were in Shar, as we know, they were by the Sharman, they were almost in Shar Nun of Klippa. And the Eibishter sent of him, out of the Eibishter's love for us, out of guarding this, the oath that the Eibishter made to Avraham Avinu, Asa Moshe Rabbeinu, the Eibishter formed a leader like Moshe Rabbeinu to turn the tide. V'Rabban Shel Kol HaNeviim, he was the leader, the teacher of all the Neviim, Shlachai, and the Eibishter sent him to the Yidden. Now, Kivan Shinsnaba, Moshe Rabbeinu, once Moshe Rabbeinu said prophecy, Ubachar Hashem B'Yisrael Nachla, and the Eibishter chose the Yidden as Hashem chose the Yidden as his inheritance. Ultimately, after Matan Torah, after taking them out of Mitzrayim, he crowned them with royalty of the mitzvahs. He notified them the ways to serve him. And hence the Rambam, this is the stepping stone into the coming halachas. What should be done in a case of idol worship and blasphemy? How to handle those that go astray and make the mistake of following Avodas Zara. And I want to share. So we've now finished the first Perek, the Perek of today, and this is a historical overview of the three stages in the mistake and how the Eibishter kicked in when it was about to get cut off. I'm saying, first of all, a very unique, fascinating fact that we have to remember is that you can never rely on the fact that a few people know. Throughout these dark times, 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes left. Okay, and Noach, Shem, Aver, they all knew. It didn't help. Not only that, in the time of Mitzrayim, when all the Yidden are going backwards, still, the Eibishter, it wasn't enough that the entire Shevet Levi knew. The Eibishter had to send Moshe Rabbeinu, had to form Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm just going to share one joke. I had a story, but we're running out of time. It says, Koshel Azavkun Kriyas Yamsuf. It's hard to make a shidduch. Like for the Eibishter for Kriyas Yam. What's up with Kriyas Yamsuf? And the answer is, so here's a fascinating line, that it says, and what happened by Kriyas Yamsuf? It says that the Malachim started saying Shira, the Eibishter turned to them and said, Shira. All my hard labor is now sinking and drowning in the water. You're busy dancing and praising the Eibishter, the singing. So what happens by a chasana is that Mashpia, the teacher, comes and sees a bacher that he invested in him, and he learned Torah and Yeshiva and Erken, and then comes the chasana, and he's getting carried away with life, and everyone's dancing. So the Rosh Yeshiva says, all my investment is now sinking. I see the Titanic going down, and you're all dancing. So this shir is here to reverse that tide. Those that want to join us, 45 minutes a day of Geshmaka learning, going through the entire Torah Shebal Peh. Again, we're not learning Rambam. We're learning the entire Torah Shebal Peh being taught by the Rambam. Important to remember that. It's Pasha, the Rambam's taking us through spoon-fed on a golden platter. And tomorrow I'm going to tell a story of the Rashal Hafla of a fellow about the Kochavin of the Torah. Have a wonderful evening.